Hello, welcome to my channel, Reading Little Blue Books Out Loud. This just happens to be a little blue book. It is Little Blue Book number 1440, and in it is entitled, Can Man Know God? A preacher removes his theological spectacles and gives a forthright answer. Written by L. M. Burkhead. This is part 2. This book was copyrighted in 1929. So this is according to the knowledge of 1929. And we left off on page 18. And we'll begin at the top of the page. His limited information concerning the nature of ultimate reality to be agnostic with respect to belief in God. I cannot, he said, explain the most ordinary bit of life about me. Why should I try to explain the whole? This lack of knowledge does not spare me. I feel at home in the universe. I know that I am a product of it. My roots go down into its substance. Another one of the outstanding liberal preachers of the country has recently said frankly to his congregation that he did not think that faith in God was of first importance. And I quote the liberal preachers because what they say and do is prophetic of the future behavior and beliefs of the vast majority of religious leaders, who lag about 100 years behind in the procession of intellectual progress. Let everyone be free to form his own conception of God, this liberal preacher says, and if he confesses his inability to form any conception of the infinite, well, he is free to form no conception at all, and is considered no less worthy. After all, no one can affirm or deny the existence of God without defining the term, and they are wisest who attempt no definition of the undefinable. Being of Herrick's opinion that God is above the sphere of our esteem, and is best known, not defining him. So long as man believes in the integrity of the universe and of himself, names and symbols are relatively unimportant. Titles can bear little relation to the infinite. If some choose to call the infinite nature, what of it? If others choose to call it reason, what of it? If others call it other, and still others love, what of it? Make the human vocabulary as rich and as broad as you may, it is still inadequate. Spell God your own way, or speak not at all. I care not, and the universe cares less. I do not think that the idea of God is as necessary for humanity as some of our religious leaders would like for us to believe. There have been religions without gods. Both Jainism and Buddhism, in their beginnings in India, repudiated the idea of the gods. Mahavira, founder of Jainism, 599 to 527 BC, scorned the idea of God. Man, thou art thine own friend. Why wishest thou for a friend beyond thyself? Early Confucianism in China frequently designated its God in such a way as to practically deny personality in the Godhead. It referred to deity as heaven. Professor Roy Wood Sellers, in his Religion Coming of Age, one of the best books on religion in this decade, has a chapter on religion before the gods. There, that's better. Primitive religion was without gods, he writes. Man lived in a world of perception and feeling. Something happens. Something does something to him. Just what it was, he had no idea, for he had, as yet, few ideas. So we have a religion of powers, things to be propitiated and controlled. Later, man personified these powers and created the gods, something in his own image. Then religion becomes an attitude and an experience dominated by the gods. The invisible world swarms with them. A heaven is created for them. They are the rulers of the world. But is there any reason why religion should stop here in the world of concrete imagination? And in a point of fact, the gods have begun to vanish, in Hindu thought, into the impersonal source of all being. Religion began without the gods, and it may end without them. The birth of the gods may be followed by the twilight of the gods. Is this what is happening today? I wish. Certainly we know many decent and intelligent people who get along without any belief in God. And there are many more whose beliefs about God are so misty as to be of no practical consequence in their lives. Preachers formerly quoted approvingly that sentiment from the Bible about people who are without God and without hope in the world. I do not find persons who live without a definite faith in God so hopeless. On the other hand, most of the people whom I know who are really trying to make the world a more decent place, who are trying to liberate human intelligence, and who are wisely concerned about human welfare, are without any practical or useful belief in God. Persons frequently say to me after they have heard me remark that we no longer sing, "Oh, for the closer walk with God," but rather, "Oh, for a closer walk with man." But why cannot we do both? Why cannot we walk close both to God and to man? I have to reply that human beings have never been able to do so. Usually those who have walked closest to God have had contempt for their fellow man. The most godlike have generally been the least interested in human welfare. The old saints calloused their knees in devotion to God. The new saints calloused their hands in devotion to their fellow man. A great many attempts are now being made to rehabilitate the idea of God. Endeavors are made to reinterpret the notion of God in terms of modern knowledge and in such terms as will fit modern life. Lynn Harold Hugh, in his recent book, The Productive Beliefs, asked the question, what is the view of God which is most potential for men living under the conditions and pressures and experiences of this world process of reconstruction after the Great War? What sort of a God will master and hold man's allegiance in that hour, when, stripped of make-believe and subterfuge, he confronts the very reality of things? Not a God, he says, who is static and immovable, sitting alone in the solemn splendor of his own perfections. Such a God will not move the age in which we live. The God who is first cause will not do. Life is an adventure. We must, therefore, have an adventurous God. He must be a God who knows turn the page, come on. He must be a God who knows how to turn the page. He must be a God who knows risk, who knows moral adventure. Such a God we have, according to Hugh, if we but look for him in creation, in revelation, in redemption, and in the life of the world. Dr. Hugh's attempt represents an endeavor to fit the God idea to man's needs. But is that justifiable? He tries to make a God that will appear to modern man. Here again, God is made in the image of man. I recently read Professor A. Seth Pringle Patterson's Guilford lectures on the idea of God in the light of recent philosophy. I found this ponderous volume made up of words, words, words. It was most unconvincing. Nearing the end of the book, there came to me frequently the lines of Omar Khayyam. Myself, when young, did eagerly frequent doctor and saint, and heard great argument about it and about, but evermore came out by the same door wherein I went. A new book entitled by Joseph Fort Newton is entitled My Idea of God. There are 18 contributors to the volume besides Dr. Newton, and there are 18 different gods presented. After reading this book, I think I understand better what Fichte meant when he said that every concept of God is necessarily that of an idol. I despair of any sort of reinterpretation of the idea of God that will be of value to thoughtful people. To people acquainted with the history of religions, with comparative religion, and with the making of theological dogmas and beliefs. Canst thou, by searching, find out God? Was the question raised by an ancient Jewish writer. If I am not mistaken, that same writer at the end of his quest exclaimed, "Oh, that I knew where I might find him!" Modern attempts are about as futile. Our thoughtful religious leaders, who no longer think of the Bible as any more of a revelation from God than Dante's Inferno, are trying to discover the character of the administrator of the world. They are seeking what David Starr Jordan recently called the master key of the unfathomed universe. They insist that God is revealed in and through the universe. He has revealed himself in the development of the universe through countless ages. But whatever it is that is revealed by the scientific discoveries about the nature of the world, certainly it cannot be classed in any manner with the gods of the religions. Ancient religious teachers who are quoted authoritatively that was a tough one. Concerning the gods, always thought of the gods as personal, as capricious, as arbitrary, and as vengeful. Modern science, which I am much more inclined to trust when it comes to any knowledge of ultimate things, reveals to us an orderly, impartial universe, a universe that is not in any sense susceptible to personal whims and fancies. Whatever that ultimate reality, so far as definition of it is concerned, we must join Emerson in his agnosticism, when he set down in the poem The Bohemian Hymn. In many forms we try to utter God's infinity, but the boundless hath no form, and the universe friend doth as far transcend an angel as a worm. The great idea baffles wit, language falters under it, it leaves the learned in the lurch. Nor art, nor power, nor toil can find the measure of the eternal mind, nor hymn, nor prayer, nor church. Even a small measure of information about the nature of our universe leads one to the belief that it is an impersonal affair. We formerly said and believed God tempers the wind to the shorn lamb. We know better now. The faith of intelligent people is very well expressed in these lines frequently quoted from Matthew Arnold's Empedocles on Etna. Streams do not turn aside the just man to entomb, nor lightnings curb their pride to give him virtuous room. The world is what it is, for all our dust and din. Consequently, prayer to the administrator of the universe is ultimate reality to it, or to whatever you call it, is of no avail. The familiar axiom, God helps those who helps themselves, simply means that God helps no one. The administration of the affairs of the universe is carried out without the consideration of the personal whims of pagans, Christians, or atheists. To revert again to our faithful friend Omar Khayyam, and that inverted bull they call the sky, where under crawling cooped we live and die, lift not your hands to it for help, for it, as impotently moves as you and I. But to get back to a definition of the final reality, in the present state of our knowledge of the ultimate nature of the world, no definition is possible. An Egyptian scribe of the 18th dynasty was not so far wrong when hymn to one of the gods he wrote. He cannot be sculptured in stone. He cannot be seen. Service cannot be rendered to him. Gifts cannot be presented to him. He is not to be approached in the sanctuaries. Where he is not known. He is not to be found in the inscribed shrines. No habitation can contain him. Besides, why should we be obsessed with the idea that we must formulate an exact definition of ultimate reality? Cannot we live decently and honorably without a full understanding of the final things? In fact, we may have to wait a long time for the various sciences to furnish adequate information for anything like a true definition of the ultimate nature of our universe. In his recent book, Living in the 20th Century, Professor Harry Elmer Barnes argues that if we are to have any true idea of deity, we must get it from some sort of a synthesis of the scientific knowledge. What we need, if any notion of God is needed, he writes, is such a conception of God as might be worked out in the light of astrophysical discoveries of Shapley, Jeans, and Michelson, and the study of atoms and electrons of Bohr, Pinnock, and Milken. Though Henshaw Ward has recently quoted Professor Eddington in the effect that the quantum theory of God is as preposterous as the astromorphic constructions. At any rate, it is of little value to insinuate a view of God as hopelessly inadequate and out of date as that which was slowly and painfully evolved by the semi-barbarous Hebrew people in the days when a crude type of geocentric and anthropomorphic outlook reigned supreme and unchallenged. I have been reminded recently by some of my friends that there are times when one views an exquisite sunset, or looks upon the majestic mountains, or surveys the heavens at night, that then one comes very close to God, or to it. One of these friends has suggested to me Tennyson's lines from the In Memoriam as a hint of what the modern man's faith might be. If e'er when faith had fallen asleep, I heard a voice, believe no more, and heard an ever-breaking shore that tumbled in the godless deep. A warmth within the breast would melt the freezing reason's colder part, and like a man in wrath the heart stood up and answered, I have felt. But these passing moods of the spirit must not be mistaken for the finalities of thought. These emotional reactions to the stars, to the mountains, and to sunsets cannot be valid for anyone except the person who experiences them. Moreover, such passing emotions cannot be made the basis of a philosophy of ultimate reality. I realize that on the part of a majority of people, there is what Professor M.C. Otto, in his 1924 book on Things and Ideas, designates as the hunger for cosmic support. Human beings refuse to be physically alone in the universe, he writes. Their demand for cosmic support is, of course, emotional, not intellectual. They want to feel that there is a friend behind phenomena. They long for a cosmic companion. But the sense of cosmic companionship is weakening with the advance of science. Professor Roy Wood Sellers, in the book which I have previously mentioned, Religion Coming of Age, writes as follows. But I think that the sense of reality is becoming stronger in the men and women of today. They want to know what the universe is actually like, and, while a cosmic companion may be much missed, there is the compensation that the universe has been robbed at the same time of some of the supernatural terrors which frightened men and women not so many years ago. I do not believe that this mere realistic view of the world necessarily removes poetic glamour from the natural order of things. The nature of the flowers at my feet, as well as the stars above my head, awaken me with awe. That quality which we formerly thought only the idea of God could arouse. The sense of wonder is increased in me when I read a certain book on physics and get a gleam of the nature of matter. The nature of the world and of life as I come to know them through the various sciences, geology, biology, chemistry, physics, psychology, etc., is such that I am likely to break out in poetry when some sort of a synthesis of my views occurs. In fact, that is precisely what I have done. One of the poems that brings me release on such occasions is Harry Kemp's The Blind. The spring blew trumpets of color. Her greens sang in my brain. I heard a blind man groping, tap tap, with his cane. I pitied him in his blindness, but can I boast I see? Perhaps there walks a spirit close by who pities me. A spirit who hears me tapping the five-sensed cane of mind, and such on guessed glory that I am worse than the blind. But in such moments when I feel that life is good and great and glorious, I am not bowing down to any sort of a God that I can harmonize with the gods of the religions. I suppose that I do have a feeling that there is a something. Certainly I am not an atheist. I do not know enough about the nature of ultimate reality to be one. However, I am willing to be the sort of atheist portrayed by Professor Sellers when he describes John Dewey and Edward Scribner Ames as pious, socially minded atheists, who are constructive in that they stress social values. Do I seem to be preaching? Well, if so, I do it because I believe that we liberals need it. I do not believe that we need to be afraid to put our message about the gods in a positive manner. As necessary as our work as destroyers has been, we have also a constructive message that we ought to make articulate. I was about to preach some more and say that it is a duty to do so. Mere defiance of the universe. And a life is not enough. May I quote again Professor Otto of the University of Wisconsin? And I quote him with full approval. Accept the stern condition of being physically alone in all the reach of space and time, that we may then, with new zest, enter the warm valley of earthly existence, warm with human impulse, aspiration, affection, warm with the unconquerable thing called life. Turn from the recognition of our cosmic isolation to a new sense of human togetherness, and so discover in a growing human solidarity, in the progressively ennobled humanity, in an increasing joy in living the goal we have all blindly sought, and build on earth the fair city we have looked for in a contemporary world beyond. No single one of us has passively accepted life. We have all insisted upon remaking it. It will be defeat for humanity if in the distant future the cooperative adventure of making human life richer and happier is interrupted by a change in the cosmic weather. But a kind of defeat which is at the same time the highest form of victory. Real defeat will overtake humanity only in so far as men themselves, forgetting that they are comrades in doom and agents of each other's woe or weal, go down the years and estranged from one friend they have, each other. And so I conclude my homily with the old platitudinous admonition. We cannot fathom the infinite. It is enough for us to love and serve humanity. And that is the end of Little Blue Book number 1440. Can Man Know God? A preacher removes his theological spectacles and gives a forthright answer. Written by L. M. Burkhead. Thanks for listening.